Aloha and welcome. You are watching Eagle News America. I'm Alfred Asenas coming to you from Honolulu, Hawaii, where the local time right now I think is a little past 4 in the afternoon. So that means it's 10 p.m. out on the East Coast. And because it's almost late in the day, late in the night, we're going to get going with our reports. But we begin here in the Aloha State for the continuation of our interview with a community leader who encourages Filipinos to take part in the 2020 U.S. Census. After that, we head on to the nation's capital where we have Estela Dominique in Washington, D.C.
Philippine Foreign Service Post in the U.S. celebrates Kalayaan 2020, commending Filipino frontliners and health workers.
And then moving to the southeast, we have Philip Toledo in Atlanta, Georgia.
Protests continue in Atlanta after a shooting death at the hands of police.
Going now to the U.S. Southwest, we have Kathleen Gregorio in Corpus Christi, Texas.
A gunman claiming to be a UFC fighter opens fire in a San Antonio parking lot, wounds 8.
Out to the Pacific Northwest, Michael Hudson in Seattle reports about coronavirus cases spiking in Washington State. And then moving to Southern California, we have Maricar Borja.
Los Angeles County continues the battle against COVID-19, racism, and homelessness.
Plus, our Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief Ace Ramirez takes us to the nation's capital where the Iglesia Ni Cristo Church of Christ reaches out to the elderly. And going back to Seattle, Washington, Bureau Chief Frendel Fajeran tells us about another outreach mission by the Church of Christ, this time Washington State joining hands with North Harvest in feeding the hungry. So a couple of pieces of good news there. And we will finish our broadcast with a little bit of how-to on how to make colorful leis and give them as ideal gifts for our graduates this year. But first, like we always do, we begin with an overview of how the world looks right now, and with the help of resources like Johns Hopkins, here are the number of cases of COVID-19 reported worldwide as of 3 p.m. Eastern Time, June 14. The number stands now at more than 7,800,000 cases. This includes more than 2 million in the US and more than 100,000 in Canada. Sadly, this virus has claimed more than 431,000 lives worldwide, to include 115,000 in the US and more than 8,000 lost in Canada. Now, last week, Eagle News interviewed Benet Misalucha of the Filipino Complete Count Committee, which strives to ensure that all Filipinos in the Aloha State are accounted for in the 2020 census. Here now is part 2 and the conclusion of that interview. Take a look.
Yung mga kababayan natin dyan na nandito sa Amerika, mag-participate tayo sa census. Alam natin na importante ito dahil nabibilang po kung ilang tayo.
Benet describes the challenges of encouraging her fellow kababayans.
One is the language barrier. Some of our first-generation immigrants, they're not necessarily as conversant with the English language or comfortable. They look at the census forms and it's just very intimidating. And they look at all these forms and they're like, I don't want to go through the motion, and the easiest thing is probably to put it on the side. Second, there's also some, I guess, fear and distrust of government. They feel that, or they are not sure about what the government will do with the information. Will it be shared with other agencies? For instance, those who are not quite tentative about their immigration status, they don't want to be in a position where they feel like it's going to be imposing on them. But actually, immigration status is not on the census forms. It's not being asked. one of the other questions is it confidential? Is it safe? Well, they're not going to be asking you about your social security number or anything like that. Nothing that, or your bank accounts. Well, if you're getting that means it's not from the census. One of the things that I want to clarify, because there seems to be some confusion about it. You do not have to be a citizen to be counted in the census. And there is only one census form per household. So that form has to actually count every member who live in the house. Everyone from lolo and lola and tito and tita, kung ilan po kayo dun sa bahay, that is who needs to be counted. Pero hindi po kailangan ang citizenship. Ito po is safe. I think having the Filipino Complete Count Committee is really a wonderful idea, because a lot of these leaders are known in the community. They can verify and validate that the census is a good thing for our community. It will help shape our future for the next 10 years.
And how has the committee been able to continue its mission during this new normal?
We just finished a historic and epic radiothon, and it was broadcasted on 5 radio stations live, 3 on in Honolulu, on Oahu, 1 on Kauai, and 1 on Maui. So that radiothon was about COVID-19 and census. So we partnered with the Philippine Medical Association. We had tremendous response from people. But in our mind, census sometimes cannot, it seems to be not a sexy enough subject matter. So we wanted to make sure that, we have another topic that could probably attract more listeners. And lo and behold, of course, because of the fact that we are in the middle of this pandemic, we said, okay, let's have information about the pandemic and COVID-19. And of course, the doctors would be Philippine Medical Association would be the appropriate partners. And it was a great partnership. We had 2 or 3 doctors in the panel. They provided information. And then we also brought in our census experts. So it was a 2-hour radiothon. Like I said, we had thousands of people who listened in, who tuned in. And of course, because it's on Facebook Live, people continue to listen to it and get information about the census as well as COVID-19. Aspect of Chismisan, we wanted to be like a talk story. So we had 2 of these. So the first one was on legal issues during the time of COVID and census. So we had a panel from the Hawaii Lawyers Association. Chismisan is going to run until August. And with each one, we have like maybe 15,000 listeners and viewers, and that's why we are reaching a vast number of audience compared to the census fairs that we originally thought we would do. So in a way, it was a blessing in disguise, right? Because now we're actually reaching out and being more creative in trying to get our message across. Let me just share with you that we're very proud actually of what Hawaii is doing. We are ahead of the curve, if you want to call it that, because in fact, back in February, when we already had some successes, I was asked to be, the keynote speaker at the Asian American Pacific Islander Census Summit in Los Angeles. And I was proud to represent Hawaii. And that's because we are doing incredible things in Hawaii that's not being done on the mainland. Somehow our people are more engaged. We have great leadership. And I think there's, from the community standpoint, excitement to spread the word, to spread the message about census. Fellow kababayans, this is a very important exercise. Being counted is very much a part of who we are as Americans. It is a time to shape our future. So I ask of you to please complete your census. It is easy, it is safe, The information is confidential. It will not be shared with any agency. So I hope you would take the time to complete the census because this is important to us and to our children and to the future of our community.
Reporting from Honolulu, Hawaii, I'm Alfred Asenas, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Mahalo nui loa. Thank you very much, Banat, for that opportunity, and best wishes on your cause. When we come back, we will have our live updates from our correspondents across the US of A. We will return in a moment. This is Eagle News.
Patindi ng patindi at tuloy-tuloy ang pagpapakita ng galing ng ating mga TNG aspirants. Abangan ang kanilang performances sa pinakamalaking talent competition sa buong bansa, Tagisan ng Galing.
This program is presented by SMC Infrastructure, building a better world. Sandig sugar-free white coffee, puno ng white coffee taste without the sugar, kaya lower calories. Try mo na Sandig sugar-free white coffee. Sarap ng white coffee, now sugar-free. Vet-approved NutriChoice, the only premium dog food with active boost for optimum energy and prebiotics that help strengthen immunity. Just like Catherine Bernardo, gawing listo ganado ang fur babies niyo. Listo ganado sa NutriChoice. Magnolia Chicken Templados, delicious, ready to cook and freshly marinated daily. Pure Foods Lunch and Meat, pure sarap for every family. Star Chunky Cheese Corned Beef, ang cheesy ng corned beef mo. Walang duda, kids can tell na #1 ang Pure Foods Standard Juicy, ang tender, ang juicy, ang sarap. Co-presented by Cooper, expert in air conditioning and electromechanical. Also engaged in structural, electrical, fire protection, plumbing, and sanitary services. Cooper, your ultimate MEPS and air conditioning solutions. Unlad Incorporated International, fight against global poverty. New San Jose Builders Incorporated. Canrib Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Vita Herbs Philippines Green Coffee, masarap, mabango, at healthy pa. Puerto Rico Resort and Convention Center, Cabiao, Nueva Ecija. I love Puerto Rico. In participation with Rain or Shine Elastomeric Waterproofing Paint, Matinco. R Square Variables Incorporated, Compizel Enterprises, Saisho International Trading Corporation, DN Steel, IMAC UPB Roof Corporation.
Hey, Gretchen Ho here, and I'm a white coffee lover. Creamy kasi, and very yummy. Pero mas masarap kung hindi nakaka-guilty. Check my new discovery, San-May Sugar-Free White Coffee. Puno ng white coffee taste without the sugar, kaya lower calories. Try mo na! San-May Sugar-Free White Coffee. Sarap ng white coffee, now sugar-free.
The successful development of TPLEX, or Tarlac Pangasinan La Union Expressway in 2009, a 4-lane toll road that extends from Tarlac City to Rosario La Union with an additional approved extension of 56 kilometers all the way to San Juan La Union. This is expected to reduce travel time to Baguio and other provinces in northern Luzon. Realizing the vision of creating a better world for Filipinos fueled the team's focus.
Listo at ganado ang baby ko sa vet-approved NutriChoice with active boost and prebiotics na pampalisto. Made with real meat, with essential nutrients to help them grow healthy and happy. Listo, ganado sa NutriChoice.
Ikaw lang ang star ng buhay ko. Para sa akin, perfect ka. Ang cheesy ng corned beef mo. Pag Star Chunky Cheese Corned Beef, sarap ng corned beef, inangat pa ng real cheese cubes. Star Chunky Cheese Corned Beef.
This is Eagle News America. I'm Alfred Asenas coming to you from Hawaii. Philippine Foreign Service posts in the United States celebrate Kalayaan 2020 marking the 122nd year of Philippine independence. Now, this year, Philippine Ambassador to the U.S., Jose Manuel Romualdez, commended the bravery and strength of Filipino frontliners and health workers in the fight against COVID-19. Joining us now in Washington, D.C., we have Estela Dominique with her story. Aloha, Estela.
Aloha, Alfred. Thank you. Indeed, June 12 is Philippine Independence Day. The celebration here this year is different due to the pandemic. The Philippine Embassy here in Washington, D.C. led Kalayaan 2020, the commemoration of the 122nd year of Philippine independence. The embassy was joined virtually via Facebook Live by Philippine consulates general in Agana, Chicago, Honolulu, Houston, Los Angeles, New York, and San Francisco, and the Philippine Permanent Mission to the United Nations in New York. Philippine Ambassador Jose Manuel G. Romualdez said in his remarks, quote, "While the COVID-19 pandemic has brought fear and uncertainty into our lives, it has also brought out the best in the Filipino, particularly through the frontliners and health workers all over the world." Dedicating the celebration to Filipinos frontlining the battle against COVID-19, Ambassador Romualdez said in an exclusive audio message sent to Eagle News, "The pandemic made us appreciate more our relationship with one another and has driven us to keep connected to one another." Let's listen.
The Philippine Foreign Service Post in the United States worked together to organize this online celebration of Philippine Independence Day for all Filipinos and our friends in the United States and the Caribbean region. While COVID-19 keeps us physically apart because of social distancing, it also makes us appreciate our relationships more and drives us to find ways and means to maintain our social connections. Thankfully, there is this available technology that allows us to feel closer to each other in this time of the pandemic. I hope that this online program will remind Filipinos that we are a nation of heroes. Our independence was won by the courage and resilience of our ancestors, and these are the same virtues displayed by the Filipino frontliners and the Filipino communities who are doing their best to uplift their fellow men during this crisis. This program is actually being dedicated to all our Filipino frontliners in the Philippines and abroad. Thank you very much to Eagle Broadcasting for broadcasting this in their network. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat at mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Ambassador Romualdez expressed appreciation to the governments of the United States and territories in the Caribbean region. He recognized their continued partnership and support for the Philippine government's efforts to assist Filipinos affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. He also acknowledged the Filipino communities in the U.S. and Caribbean for their bayanihan spirit and the dedicated service of personnel of the Philippine diplomatic and consular missions in the United States. Esther Barroso Guerzon and Roy Flores, two Filipino-American musical theater artists and members of Broadway Barkada, performed Umagang Kay Ganda and Beautiful City. Guerzon said performing at the celebration was an honor. She thanked overseas Filipino workers for their irrefutable dedication. Take a look.
Being part of Kalayaan 2020, or the recent Philippine Independence Day celebration with the Philippine embassies all over the U.S., was a very special moment for me. That was my very first time to participate in such an important event, so I was very honored and grateful to be a part of it. And it's also not every day that I get to sing in Tagalog, so that made it even more meaningful for me. My message to our overseas Filipino workers, just a huge thank you to all of you for your hard work, sacrifice, and dedication. I pray that you all stay safe and remain healthy. Mabuhay at maraming salamat sa inyong lahat.
A tribute was given to Filipino frontliners in the Philippines, the U.S., and Caribbean region. Eagle News asked Jeffrey Sanidad, an overseas Filipino worker in D.C., why he thinks Filipinos around the world should show solidarity now more than ever. Here's what he said.
Sa makabagong panahon, Ang pagiging bayani ay hindi na lamang nasusukat sa pagbubuwis ng buhay sa pakikidigma. Bagkus, sa lumalaganap na pandemya, ipinamalas nito ang iba't ibang uri ng pagiging bayani. Sa paglaganap ng nakahahawang sakit na ito, ipinabatid nito sa ating lahat na tayo ay pantay-pantay lamang. Walang pinipili ang sakit na ito kung ikaw man ay mayaman o mahirap, sa kulay ng iyong balat, sa lengguwaheng iyong ginagamit sa larangan ng pakikipagtalas-tasa. Ang pagmamalasakit at pagtulong sa kapwa ay ilan lamang sa katangian ng pagiging isang bayani. Sa pagkakataong ito, naipamalas na naman ng mga Filipino ang kabayanihan sa bawat isa. Ang pagtutulungan sa panahon ng kahirapan. Sa panahong ito, muli, atin na naman itong naipamalas na sa pamamagitan ng pagkakaisa, pagmamalasakit at pagtulong sa kapwa, kakayanin natin anuman ang pagsubok sa ating buhay. Gaya ng mga pinamalas ng ating mga bayani upang ating makamtan ang kasarinlan o kalayaan ng bansang Pilipinas. Mula po dito sa bansang Amerika, ako po si Jeff Sanidad, bumabati po sa bawat Filipino sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo sa ating paggunita sa araw ng kalayaan ng bansang Pilipinas. Mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Eagle News here in the nation's capital wishes to greet all Filipinos a happy Independence Day. In Washington, D.C., Estella Dominique, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Alfred.
Maraming salamat, mahalo, Estella, for that wonderful report. Very informative and very inspiring with those remarks from the ambassador, Esther, and that one Filipino overseas worker. Now, you are Filipino of descent yourself. How do you keep connected with the Filipino community there, in your neighborhood?
Well, Alfred, our family always looks forward to events sponsored by the Philippine Embassy here in DC. They would actually sponsor culture events around the area. I remember one time we went to our international film festival here where the Philippines had several entries. They were very entertaining and informative. So I remember that. It was very exciting. So that's one way I keep connected to the Filipino community.
That's good to know. Now, I take it you and your sister are still students, and of course, the next school year is not far away. How do you what can you do as far as maintaining the Pinoy culture, and being proud of for your peers in your school community?
Well, before the pandemic happened, some of my friends, my sister and I, we wanted to share the Filipino culture with our classmates in our school. We found a teacher who is also Filipino. He sponsored the club. We created a club called Makabayan Club for our school. We would have meetings and we would invite non-Filipino and Filipinos to the meetings, and we'll just share about the culture and also inform them about Filipino facts, the facts about the Philippines, and just interesting cultural facts. And it was very fun because a lot of people came, which was very inspiring.
That's awesome. Now, so it looks like in-campus schooling may or may not, take place. But regardless, what are your plans for this Makabayan Club in the coming school year?
Hopefully, we could continue this club in the future. A lot of activities we planned for the past school year could not happen because of the situation. If the following school year is still online, we'll just have to adapt to the environment on maybe like online meetings to continue those meetups. But if ever we do go back to campus, we'll continue to hold the meetings, hopefully. And we want to train lower classmen so they could continue this club, because it's actually the first Filipino culture-based student organization in our high school, so which is pretty cool. So hopefully it continues in the future.
That's good to know. You guys have, a plan at least in place and being flexible about it. Salutations to you, and make sure your parents reward you for that hard work, especially what you're doing right now. Thank you very much, Estella. You take care, please.
Thank you.
Now, moving on to the southeastern U.S. Protests continue in Atlanta after a shooting death at the hands of the local police. Standing by live with us is our Georgia correspondent, Philip Toledo, with the latest. Aloha, Philip.
Thank you, Alfred. Over the past several weeks, Atlanta and the surrounding area has seen thousands take to the streets in protest of racial injustice and police brutality. It seemed as if things had started to calm down when last Friday night, a black man, Rayshard Brooks, was shot and killed during an encounter with Atlanta police. Officers were responding to a complaint of a man asleep in a car in a Wendy's drive-thru. After Mr. Brooks, who was the one asleep, failed a field sobriety test, the officers moved to arrest him. Based upon released dashcam footage, he began to resist, leading to a struggle wherein he grabbed one of the officers' tasers and attempted to flee, at which point one of the officers discharged their service weapon. He was transported to a nearby hospital where he was later pronounced deceased. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms expressed her frustration regarding yet another instance of alleged excessive force by the Atlanta PD in the past 2 weeks. Let's take a look.
For the third time in just 2 weeks, I have spent the better part of a day reviewing video footage involving allegations of excessive use by members of the Atlanta Police Department. Tragically, the most recent incident involved the fatal shooting of a 27-year-old man, Rayshard Brooks.
She then called for the immediate termination of the officer who fired the shots at Mr. Brooks.
While there may be debate as to whether this was an appropriate use of deadly force, I firmly believe that there is a clear distinction between what you can do and what you should do. I do not believe that this was a justified use of deadly force and have called for the immediate termination of the officer.
Now, as protests in Atlanta and really across the country have rallied for weeks for the reform of police departments and procedures, the mayor went on to share some of the actions she was putting in place as a result of this incident.
We have already convened an advisory committee to examine our use of force policies in our city and expect feedback within the next 2 weeks with final recommendations within the next 45 days.
Now, even with the termination of the officer involved, as the mayor herself had called for, protests continued throughout the weekend, blocking a major interstate, and the Wendy's where this incident took place was actually set on fire this past Saturday night. Tensions are running high in the city, all while COVID-19 is still very much present. Data released by the Georgia Department of Public Health shows an upward trend in the moving average of daily new cases, although it does appear that the moving average of daily COVID-related deaths has trended downward consistently over the last month or so. To date, there have been over 57,000 positive cases in Georgia and almost 2,500 deaths. In Atlanta, Georgia, Philip Toledo, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Alfred.
Mahalo. Thank you, Philip. Now, Atlanta Chief of Police has been vocal and visible as well during the last few weeks with the protests, of course, with the pandemic. What's her own reaction about this latest incident?
Yeah, that's a good question, Alfred, because I remember a few weeks ago, right after the death of George Floyd, I noticed that the Atlanta Police Chief, Erica Shields, she was very vocal, or actually very blunt, calling his death a murder and expressing her outrage as a member of law enforcement. But unfortunately, since then, there have been several very high-profile incidents here in Atlanta where officers were using excessive force, one of which, or allegedly using excessive force, one of which was, there's a video out there of these two officers forcibly removing two college students from their car during one of the protests. And apparently after this last incident, maybe that was the straw that broke the camel's back, because the police chief has actually announced that she is going to be stepping aside. Mayor Bottoms mentioned that in her press conference this weekend as well, thanking her for her service, but also saying, and agreeing with the chief, that this is the best to allow for someone new to come in and help reform and rebuild trust in this community, especially after all of these things that have been happening lately.
What about the climate, in your immediate neighborhood? Talking with neighbors, friends, what's the conversation like? Is there still a bit of tension, or is this part of the new normal there in Atlanta as well?
I hate to call it the new normal because as far as my memory goes back the last couple of weeks, tensions have been very high, whether it's just talking to my neighbors or even just like many of us trying to stay home and being connected to people through our many gadgets and devices. There's a lot of polarizing opinions, and even just this latest incident, people are looking at it from every different angle and being frustrated. And with the pandemic, which, like I mentioned, the numbers, I wish I was here to tell you that the numbers were going down and we were just moving from one problem to the next. It's like they're all adding on top of each other. But at least for me and my family, we're trying our best to stay positive.
That's good to hear, Philip. And of course, communication is key with friends, families, neighbors, regardless of opinions. I think that's really crucial to just keep an open mind and really accept each other's thoughts and just express yourselves. That's what
Absolutely.
We're here for in America. Well, you take care of yourself, please. I know it's late, and we'll see you in the next set of broadcasts, all right?
Thank you, Alfred. Take care.
When we come back, we'll have more updates from our correspondents across the U.S. We will return shortly. This is Eagle News. We welcome you back to our broadcast from the southeast of the U.S. We go to the southwest in the great state of Texas, where a gunman claiming to be a UFC fighter opens fire, my goodness, in a San Antonio parking lot, wounding 8 people. Our Texas Bureau Chief there, Kathleen Gregorio, has the latest. Aloha, Kathleen.
Aloha to you, Alfred, and howdy from the Lone Star State. Here in San Antonio, Texas, police are searching for a gunman that opened fire at a parking lot of a bar late Friday night, wounding 8 people. According to a statement by Police Chief William McManus, the victims are currently hospitalized and all are expected to survive. The shooting took place after the suspect and his companions were rejected from entering the bar due to intoxication. After being denied entry, the suspect questioned bar employees saying, "Don't you know who I am? I'm a UFC fighter from California." After which, he walked across the street, retrieved a rifle from his vehicle, and fired several rounds, hitting 5 women and 3 men, ages 23 to 41, according to San Antonio police. The suspect and his friends fled the scene before officers arrived. No arrests have been made and police are still on the lookout. Meanwhile, we shift gears to the surge in COVID-19 cases here in the Alamo City. On Saturday, the San Antonio Metropolitan Health District confirmed 230 more cases of COVID-19, which brought the total number of cases in the city to 4,242 and a total of 88 deaths. On Thursday, Dr. Don Emmerich, director of the Metropolitan Health District, said the numbers are certainly creeping up and we are entering a second wave, as other cities in Texas also show a rise in COVID-19 numbers. Emmerich stated the spike in cases could be a result of increased gatherings that took place during Memorial Day weekend, as well as the recent reopening of the state economy. She urges the public, especially those with underlying conditions, to take this seriously. San Antonio Mayor Ron Nirenberg stated, "We must continue to work together to contain the spread of COVID-19. We likely will be battling this pandemic for a long time, and our best defense is vigilance." Now, Baseball Hall of Famer Nolan Ryan has some tough words to share. In partnership with the Office of the Governor of Texas, he released a public service announcement Wednesday titled, "Don't be a knucklehead," to encourage all Texans to follow safety protocols like washing their hands, social distancing, and wearing a mask. Let's take a look.
Hey everyone, Nolan Ryan here. As we open Texas for business, we all need to work together in the fight against COVID-19. As Texans, we need to be responsible. We need to be smart. So when you leave the house, don't be a knucklehead. Wash your hands, socially distance yourself from others, and wear a mask. Do the right things. Look out for your fellow Texans, and together we'll make it through this.
In San Antonio, Texas, I'm Jane Kathleen Gregorio, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Alfred.
Mahalo. Thank you very much, Kathleen. So I take it, in Texas, the lockdowns, whether in whole or part in some major cities, have affected the economy there. And of course, there are some businesses that are actually thriving. What are the creative things that some of the businesses out there are doing to stay afloat and attracting customers still?
Well, Alfred, that's a great question. I wanted to mention, they're not necessarily businesses in the traditional sense. They are a couple of community theaters here in Texas that were hit hard by the pandemic lockdown. However, because they specialize in theater arts, they found creative ways to raise funds as the economy slowly reopens. One of them in Corpus Christi, Texas, Harbor Playhouse, they developed a program called Curbside Concessions, where customers order their food online from the theater's online menu, drive up to the theater parking lot, and their food is delivered by costumed characters who have a different theme every weekend, who also provide entertainment to the families parked in their cars. So kind of like a different version of the drive-through theater, if I may say. And another community theater called Aurora Arts came up with Cinema Days, where on weekends they offer musical-themed films to the public, admission-free, but with donations accepted, as a creative way to help the theater. In fact, Eagle News was able to interview a couple of these theater coordinators, and we will actually hear them from a later episode. So stay tuned to Eagle News for that. Alfred?
Thanks for the heads up there, Kathleen. Good to see some folks being creative and in a way helping others at the same time. Trying to make it successful for themselves. I just hope those costumes are cool enough. I know there in South Texas or Texas as a whole, it should be like in the 90s, 100s right now, right?
Yes, actually, it's interesting you should mention that, Alfred. Unlike, Hawaii, which, when I was there, had a lot of mild weather, the Texas summers are really hot. In fact, one of my coworkers was telling me that her husband, who was a frontliner, hated going out because it seemed like what was 90 degrees felt like 190 degrees to him. It's quite warm here in Texas, but it's not even the first day of summer yet. So typical Texas weather around this time of year. We could use some more of your Hawaii breezes.
They got the trade winds right now. We wish we could redirect them towards your way there in the great state of Texas. But you hang in there. We look forward to.
Thank you, mahalo, Alfred.
Look forward to some more reports. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Let's go to the Pacific Northwest, where coronavirus cases have spiked in Washington. In Seattle, we have Michael Hudson with the details.
Hey Alfred, I hope you're doing well. I wanted to give you some statistical information on the state before we tackle our two stories today. So as of today, the positive cases for COVID-19 are currently at 25,538, and the death toll is just over 1,200. According to the Department of Health, there has been a large surge of positive COVID-19 cases in the state, mainly in the east counties of Yakima, Spokane, Franklin, and Benton. And these counties are just about an average of a 3 to 4 hour drive east of the city of Seattle. According to one of the healthcare officials, the outbreaks east of the Cascades are now comparable to the worst days of the coronavirus epidemic in King County, home to Seattle, in mid-March. Though they are much more sparsely populated, there are as many cases per capita now in the eastern counties as there were in Seattle during the height of its outbreak. So many of these cases stem from the Memorial Day weekend, as well as the now increased availability of testing kits. There's obviously much concern coming from both the healthcare officials as well as the state governor, Jay Inslee, who will be going back to the drawing board to generate some creative solutions, as most of the state's businesses have already reopened. With the protests that have happened these past couple of weeks, time will only tell if the numbers will increase even more, since there were so many large gatherings persistent with the cities. Speaking of protests, there was a March of Silence event held in Seattle yesterday, where approximately 60,000 people gathered at Judkins Park and stood in silence. Many were holding signs and flags saying "No justice, no peace," and "Black Lives Matter." This is a major contrast from the many of the protests that were held weeks before, mainly that these protests consisted of people yelling, chanting, and sounding off horns and obviously looting, while this protest yesterday was observing nothing but silence. By doing this, it is the hope of the group who organized this march, which is called the Black Lives Matter Seattle King County, that justice will emerge within the police system and also create major reform within the police community as well. So this event is a chain reaction of other prior protests, as many as around the entire state and country continue to unify in making their voices and actions heard to proclaim the importance of racial equality in the United States. So it seems that the main priority right now in the state is to improve racial health as opposed to the physical health. Reporting from Seattle, Washington, I'm Michael Hudson, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Mahalo much, Michael, for that update, and you take care of yourself there as well. Now, we go down to Southern California. LA County continues the battle against COVID-19, racism, and homelessness. In North Hills, we have Maricar Borja with her update. Aloha, Maricar.
Hello, thank you, Alfred. As the county and city of Los Angeles, California continues to confront the pandemic situation and alleged accusations of racism and police brutality issues from the protests. Another ongoing concern of Los Angeles is the rising cases of homelessness. Over the weekend, LA Mayor Eric Garcetti has been addressing this ongoing problem and how the city has taken action. Mayor Eric Garcetti tweets, "In the city of LA, we have opened 13 Abridge Homes shelters and will have 24 open by August. There are 10,000 units of permanent supportive housing open or in the pipeline." The mayor also cites that Project Roomkey, the state and county combined action to shelter the homeless with the goal of preventing the spread of COVID-19, has placed over 3,700 homeless residents in hotels and motels throughout Los Angeles. From the results of the 2020 Greater Los Angeles homeless count of the LA Homeless Services Authority, just released last Friday, the county has a 12.7% increase in homelessness since last year in January, with 66,433 people being homeless, and the city has an even slightly greater percentage of 14.2%, with 41,290 Angelenos experiencing homelessness. This data accounts for the month of January 2020, when the homeless count was done before the pandemic situation. Mayor Eric Garcetti affirms that Los Angeles has been working on this homelessness crisis. He cites 23,000 Los Angeles residents were sheltered in 2019, which is double that number 5 years back. The count also calls to attention that African Americans are 4 times likely to be homeless in Los Angeles. Mayor Garcetti states, as we work for racial justice, we have to confront the disproportionate rate of Black Angelenos who live without homes. The 2020 Homeless County released today shows that even as we house people at an unprecedented rate, even more are falling into homelessness. In Los Angeles County, the number of new cases increased with 1,003 newly reported cases and 17 new deaths. The total number of confirmed cases in the county is 73,018, with 2,907 deaths as announced today by the LA Public Health Department. Meanwhile, the state of California currently has a total of 145,643 confirmed COVID-19 cases and 4,989 deaths as recorded by the California Department of Public Health. In North Hills, California, Maricar Borja, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Alfred.
Thanks for that update, Maricar. Now, with initiatives like A Bridge Home and Project Roomkey, from what you've gathered, is LA County in a good position to meet the rising numbers of homeless?
The state and county are currently working to solve the homelessness situation, but there are still currently significant challenges that they face. Project Roomkey, for example, came about in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, but it's specifically designed to only be temporary housing. And according to the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, this year, economic hardship was claimed by 59% of unsheltered adults as the reason for being homeless. And within LA's economy is still trying to gain traction because of the coronavirus crisis. Even more Angelenos may face the possibility of homelessness due to loss of employment during this time.
Yeah, let's continue to track the progress there in LA County. I know it's, being America's second largest city, it always gets that attention, even for good and not so good reasons. And you take care of yourself there, Maricar.
Thank you.
When we come back, we continue with our good news stories about neighbors helping neighbors in this time of need. This is Eagle News. We'll be right back. Alfred Asenes from Hawaii at your service for Eagle News America. Heeding a call for help amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The Iglesia Ni Cristo, or Church of Christ in the U.S. Capitol, reached out to their elderly neighbors with household necessities. Our bureau chief there, Ace Ramirez, has more. Ace?
Amid the COVID-19 pandemic and the civil unrest bombarding the nation, the spirit of neighbors helping neighbors is very much alive here in the nation's capital.
This event is Aid to Humanity, based on what we learn, teachings of the Bible, that we can help our fellow men, especially those who are in need. This place, Victory Heights Apartment, was one of our sites for a village evangelical mission.
It was a Bible study that was here and fellowship. And a lot of the residents came down and they really enjoyed it.
The manager of this building texted me or emailed me telling us that if the Church of Christ is possible to donate any goods or foods and any items that can help the residents of this building.
In January, and did a full-fledged outreach program and brought food and talked with our residents, showed celebration, and the church has just been there for us, the last couple of months. We really appreciate that.
We prepared 100 goodie bags, and I think this one is a big help for all the residents, especially for those who are reaching out to the Church of Christ, asking for a help, and we are very quick to respond positively.
The 78 residents that live here, we have 75 apartments and we have a couple of couples. They're all 62 years of age and older. We are managed by Habitat America, but the owner of the building is Victory Housing, dedicating their lives to senior living, low income.
Is this government funded?
It is subsidized, yes.
Subsidized, all right, okay.
Subsidized by HUD.
The main reason, of course, we follow one of the teachings of the Holy Scriptures to help those who are in need. But not only material things that we offer to them, most especially spiritual blessings.
Thank you so much for your devout understanding of giving back. We need your support continuously throughout this virus pandemic, that our residents are not able to get out, and you've come and showed your loyalty to the human race, and we're all in this together, so we have to survive together, and we really appreciate your loyalty.
This church indeed is unstoppable. From Washington, D.C., I'm Ace Ramirez. We live in interesting times.
Thank you very much, Ace, for that piece of good news. Now, from Washington, D.C. in the east, we go west to Washington State, where again, the Iglesia Ni Cristo, or Church of Christ, recently teamed up with North Harvest in order to address the hunger issue there, especially during these very trying times. Our Seattle Bureau Chief, Frendel Fejeran, has the details. Frendel?
COVID-19, the coronavirus, have put a stop to the world. Thankfully now, there are counties and states that are moving towards normalcy, the new normalcy. However, the Iglesia Ni Cristo Church of Christ, they continue to focus on the good and what they can do to serve the community. They join hands with Northwest Harvest in feeding those who are in need.
Walking alongside Northwest Harvest just made me think about the kind relationship that Northwest Harvest and the Iglesia Ni Cristo Church of Christ have built throughout the years. And despite of the restrictions in place due to the pandemic, neither of the organizations have stopped in doing good to the community. And it may be because of their strong mission statements. So the members of the Iglesia Ni Cristo throughout the whole state of Washington
dropped off their generous donations at a location nearest them, and later all completely filled boxes were collected at the Church of Christ Seattle Chapel, and from there the goods were delivered to Northwest Harvest.
Amid this pandemic, the shelves at Northwest Harvest weren't always stocked like this.
We have been very, very low on supplies. It has happened where these shelves have just been empty. Yeah. So that's why I say we appreciate the help and we do need it.
Northwest Harvest didn't allow the empty shelves to stop them from reaching out to the community, because every day they live by their mission to lead the fight for hungry people statewide to have access to nutritious food while respecting their dignity and promoting good health.
donations given by the Iglesia Ni Cristo Church of Christ have left Northwest Harvest filled with joy and appreciation.
I would like to say to Iglesia Ni Cristo that I am very grateful. Northwest Harvest is very grateful for the donations.
To see Church of Christ bring in this large truckload of donations and to give it during this time of COVID is extremely important. And I just think that it's so wonderful because I think that during these times we can forget about community, we can think about ourselves and what's going on in the world and kind of protect ourselves and forget those who are already food insecure and forget about those who will be food insecure now because of COVID, and to see Church of Christ come together and help out during this time and give donations for those that are in need is amazing. And we're beyond grateful. I'm beyond grateful for that.
Material donations is something that the Iglesia Ni Cristo is always willing to provide to their community in need. Brother Barry Thompson, minister of the gospel, expresses the primary gift they are always willing and available to share with the community.
So our priority is concerning their spiritual needs. And when we talk about needs, you have material needs and you have spiritual needs, right? The spiritual needs make the inner person strong. Material needs like food make the person's physical body strong. When a person's physical body is strong, but the inner person is weak, they won't be able to make it. But even if their physical body is weak, but their inner person is strong, they can get through a lot of things. So more than the material things that we could give to people, right, which is important, we believe firmly that greater importance to the community is that their spiritual needs be met in the best way possible.
Though many individuals and households struggle to make ends meet, the Iglesia Ni Cristo Church of Christ unite and set aside their hardship to band together. But why?
Our executive minister himself has set these things up long time ago. He spearheads activities like this all over the world. So we have already a pattern that even when times are difficult and uncertain, we're able to still be able to help our community in the way that we're doing it right now. So we want to always remember our executive minister and thank him always for his great leadership.
Wrapping up my interview with the Iglesia Ni Cristo Church of Christ, Brother Barry Thompson addresses the community with this special message.
When there are some who may turn a deaf ear to the needs of the community, not the Church of Christ. So hopefully that gives people some hope that they can count on us, right, to help them.
It is always so assuring to know that there is an organization willing and ready to help the community in need, just like the Iglesia Ni Cristo Church of Christ.
From Kent, Washington, Friends of the Heron, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
Thank you very much, Friend Del, for that awesome piece of good news there in the Pacific Northwest. Looking forward to a lot of other communities to be highlighted as a way of giving back in these challenging times. When we come back, learn how to make beautiful lace as gifts for our graduating class of 2020. Don't go away. This is Eagle News. Welcome back to our broadcast here in Hawaii. In the past couple of weeks, we at Eagle News America have been recognizing students and other academic achievers from the class of 2020, especially in these times when a lot of the traditional ceremonies have been canceled or postponed. Now, in recognition for their hard work and dedication, here is Liza Cristobal, a friend of ours here at EBC Hawaii Bureau, as she will teach us on how to make colorful lace as a perfect gift for that grad. Take a look.
Here's the materials I'm going to use for yarn making. I have yarn, I have a easy beater, I have pulling nuts, a ribbon, a tape, the straw, scissors. Let's go do it and have fun. sleigh is for you folks.
Mahalo nui loa. Thank you very much, Liza and Erickson Cristobal, for that heartwarming and very informative video. And before we sign off, let's continue to thank and congratulate our frontline and essential workers who continue to look out for our health and safety, not only in response to COVID-19, but especially in light of recent events of uncertainty in our communities. Salutations. And a shout out, of course, to the historic class of 2020. We are proud of you, and please, we look forward to a bright future for you, all of you out there graduating. We thank you for watching Eagle News America. I'm Alfred Acenas, coming to you from Honolulu, Hawaii. We live in interesting times. Aloha.